We would like to welcome longtime Star Trek Vulkon convention promoter Joe Motes to the show to discuss the B. Joe Trimble penned article on how to run a con. Thanks for joining us, Joe. So, give us a history on how you ran your Star Trek conventions.
When I started doing them, I basically wanted. I had gone to a few where they were like 9 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon, and everybody went home. And I wanted to do the ones that ran on the whole weekend. So I started in Miami, where I was living at the time, and it was successful. We had films all night long. We had panels. Of course, the stars came on, did the Q&A, signed autographs. And then after a few times of doing it, I started expanding, first in Florida. So went from Miami on to Orlando, and then Orlando on to Tampa. And then after a while, I was being invited to go to other cities. So I started going to Atlanta, Cleveland, Baltimore, Dallas. By then I had taken a new partner. Her name was Ruthanne Devlin, and which I needed because it was very hard trying to do everything between hotels and contracts with the stars and everything else. So that's how I got started.
So that's great. So yeah, you were all over the Southeast, and I used to live in Atlanta, and I remember when you first came to Atlanta, and you had Patrick Stewart. I think it was '91.
That was at the Castlegate Hotel.
Such a great hotel. At the time, I loved that hotel. I know it got run down later, and now it's been torn down.
Right. Last time I was in Atlanta, they had a new a mall or something there.
Yeah, and but I remember so well because there were a lot of cons at that hotel, and it actually looked like a castle on the outside.
Right. And Patrick Stewart was my the biggest. I mean, I had already done other stars like Jonathan, and of course, by then I had already worked with all the originals. But when we did Patrick, that was the biggest convention, and it wound up being the biggest till I retired. 3,900 fans showed up. The lines went from the floor that Patrick was signing on to the outside of the building and up the outside stairs to the top floor. And it just
Amazing.
And he went ahead and signed for everybody.
That is so cool. And yeah, he was such a great guest.
He was. It was the first time we ever worked with him.
Well, so what was it like though to work out contracts with the stars?
Well, everybody was different. Some stars have their like a friend or their regular movie agent or TV agent don't want to do the conventions. So mostly some of the stars we do, like for the originals, I dealt with them directly, except for Nimoy Shatner and DeForest Kelley. They had people that took care of it for them, and it wasn't their movie agent. But for the other ones, like Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, there were fans that were friends of theirs that wound up doing the work for them, doing the contract signings and all. And as a matter of fact, some of the stars that were stars, Erin Gray, one in particular, she became an agent. And if you remember Erin Gray, she was in Buck Rogers in the 25th Century.
I do. I remember her as Wilma.
Some of these stars figure, well, I'll make money making movies and TV shows, but I'll also try and make money on the side contracting stars. So they wound up getting a bunch of stars and contracting them. And that's how everything revolved little by little. You had asked me a question the other day about why the stars signing autographs and charging. I want to say
because they didn't charge back then.
They did not, right. And what happened was that never crossed my mind until LeVar Burton gave me a call at home. He saw an ad somewhere, and he said, "So you're at." Well, first it's funny because he calls up and he says, "Hi, Joe Motes," and says, "This is me." He says, "This is LeVar Burton," and I said, "LeVar Burton?" I said, "Star Trek?" I said, yes, that's me. He says, I like you're doing a show, and I don't remember what city it was in. It says, but I would like to come to that show. And I said, LeVar, I already got all the contracts and everything's already set. I just don't have the budget to be able to pay somebody else. He said, no, what I want to do is I want to come, just give me a table and give me a hotel room, and I'll make my money off the autographs. So I said, okay, we'll do that. So the show went on. He did real good. And then he came up and he asked me on that Sunday, would I like to get him for other shows in the same manner? And I said, yeah, that would work out great, because that means I have more money to be able to pay for somebody else to come in. And he was happy. He made more money selling his autographs than he did if he would have been paid.
Yeah,
So
so like it was LeVar's burden. It was his idea, like to the first one to do that, to sign autographs just for money and not have the con pay him to be there because he could just make money from the autographs.
right. And then that gave me the idea that I can get more stars, minor caliber. In other words, secondary, not the primary, to come in. And so we started approaching all these other stars, like let's say like the Bill Campbells and Michael and Sarah. So they would come, bring their photos, and they would charge for their autographs, and that's how I got started. And then years later, I realized that Creation is doing it. So I guess they got the idea from me.
Uh-huh.
I want to assume they got the idea from me because I don't go to Creation shows, so I don't know. But yeah,
But that was cool. Yeah.
and then the interesting thing was that years later, I would get a phone call from an astronaut, and I was doing a show in Orlando, and he asked me if I saw my commercial said I would like to come to your show and what do you call it? Talk to the fans and all that. How much would you pay me? And I told the astronaut, he was a shuttle astronaut, not a Apollo or Gemini. I said, sir, what I can do is I can give you a table. Bring an assortment of photos, not just one, but just bring an assortment of photos because people like to buy 2, 3, or 4 if they're different. And then you go ahead and charge whatever you want to charge. So he was. I met him on that Friday night. He came. He set up. I met his family. He brought his wife and children. And that Sunday afternoon, he came up to me and says, "Listen, is there any other shows I can do?" And I said, "Yeah. Here's my list of shows." And it says, I asked him. He says, "Well, how did you do?" He says, "Man, I did great." And then I asked him jokingly, "How much were you hoping that I pay you as a guest?" And says, "Well, I was only hoping that maybe you'd pay me $400 or $500. And it says, "Well, did you do good?" And he said, "Boy, did I do good." So it says, "Okay, you're welcome to come to my other shows, but I want to ask you for a favor. Do you know of any other astronauts?" Because I didn't know any. He said, "Do you know any other astronauts that would like to do this?" And it says, "I know them all. I've worked with all of them from Apollo, Gemini, Mercury, and they would. I'll talk to them and tell them how I did and all that stuff." And before I knew it, everybody from Buzz Aldrin on down started contacting me to come to shows.
Awesome.
And when they're charging, like Buzz Aldrin was charging at the time on his first show with me, $75 an autograph, and he had 1,000 people come
Wow.
to pay for autographs. So you can multiply that and figure out how much these stars were making.
I mean, that's more than some people charge now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, but that's how I got started. It was just by luck. And apparently now because I haven't been, the only show I go to is down here in South Florida. It's called SuperCon. And I only go if it's a star, any Trek stars or any sci-fi stars that I know. I go by there just to say hi. And in a way, I feel like, I wonder if they remember me. You know, when you've been out of business for 15 years. And so far, everybody has remembered me. So I guess it boosts my ego.
Oh,
I
yeah. So
I
you were
hate to put
probably
it that
nice to
way,
them. Yeah.
Hey
but
Joe, all the years running Vulkon, do you have any crazy stories of dealing with the stars?
well, there are a lot of crazy stories. I mean, that's all right with you. I'll tell you stories without names.
Yeah,
Some are
sure.
alive, some are past. But one star. This one is Trek. And it's a she. She came and she brought her. I guess she brought her stash. So the entire weekend she was up high, and it was pretty tough to like, try and get her on. With coffee and everything else to try and get her on stage, which she finally did. She did on stage and she did good. That's one example. Another example, and this one I will mention his name because it was really funny. Robert Beltran did my first show, and he had never done a show before. And come Saturday, and it's time for him to go on stage, and we're behind stage, and he panics and he doesn't want to go on stage. And he said, "Robert, you here? You've been paid. These people are waiting for you. You just can't let them down." So I almost like pushed him on stage.
Was
And
that when he was in Atlanta?
um, you know what? I don't know if it was Atlanta or Orlando.
Okay, but I know I saw him in Atlanta.
It's the first show he ever did for me. So I can probably find out and email you later because I got on Wikipedia. I have a fan that created a page for Vulkon, and it has every show with every star, every city, so I can look in there. Uh, but the funny thing about it was when his hour was up, after pushing him on stage, when his hour was up, he didn't want to get off stage. So like,
Oh, great. Yeah, he loved it, didn't he?
yeah. So I mean, there's one star I'm not going to mention. This had to do in a way with the cruise, but I'm not going to talk about the cruise. But what happened was that I was doing one of the cruises, and the company Eastern Airlines had gone bankrupt, and I had put all the stars from California to Miami, which is when the ship was leaving. And these were the originals at the time and some of the next gen. And I had put them on we had to put them on Continental because Eastern filed bankruptcy. And we had to fly into Fort Lauderdale. But we made arrangements with a real nice bus, the kind of bus that rock stars use, not a city bus or like a Greyhound or anything. To get them from Fort Lauderdale to Miami, we had the entire ship, so the ship was on hold, and we got the police to escort us. But there's one particular star, and Gene Roddenberry was in this cruise. Uh, when we got to the bus, this particular star did not want to get in the bus, and basically says, "I'm a star. I don't ride buses. I want a limousine." And we went back and
Oh,
forth between this and said, "Look, we cannot get you a limousine. We have a ship that's being whole for us to get there because there's already past the time." So finally, what do you call it? Gene came down off the bus and told the person, "Oh, hush up and get on the bus." So the person got on the bus, and
uh-huh.
and that was it. But from that point on, after that, she never ever worked for me again at a convention. Uh,
Oh, wow. Well, but
and,
but
and
when Gene talks, they listen though.
yes, and finally I had another partner at the time. Ruthanne had passed away, and I had Fernando, and uh, Fernando wanted to get the star. I said, "Look, I particularly, if you want to get him, get him." So, but he doesn't want to work with me, so forget it. And I was there to meet her with my daughter, and this was like 20 some odd years later. And she comes up. They get into the hotel lobby. She sees me. She like puts her face up and just walks past me. So 20
Mm-hmm.
years went by and he never forgot it.
Yeah, so she remembered. Well, it happens sometimes.
Yeah. So
So,
and win them all.
so what were some of the challenges that you faced along the way that you had to overcome?
Well, the biggest challenge was creation. They really didn't want us around. They thought they owned the whole United States, and so we got to the point where we eventually walked. Well, Ruthanne actually did the negotiating. It's very tough, like for me, to negotiate with them because I'm a Marine, and I lose my temper pretty fast. So basically, it says, okay, here's what we'll do. You stay out of our cities. That's what they told us, and we'll stay out of your cities. So, and that was about the biggest challenge. And the funny thing about it, they tried to do a cruise out of Miami, and they wound up canceling it. They just couldn't get the people because the people were already used to mine.
Well, so at least you got them on that. And at
Now,
least that, yeah, staying out of your territory is good because they're so huge.
right, and we did. The only time that we went to Los Angeles, it was their territory, but it was as a favor for Bill Campbell, and we did 5 conventions that were called William Campbell Fantasticons, and what they were was the money we raised was donated to the Motion Picture and Television Fund, which is the hospital that took care of the stars, and because of that, they knew we weren't competing with them. So and was open to everybody, not only Star Trek, but we had all kinds of stars coming to this, and there were 5 of them done. They were in Los Angeles. Um, but almost all the stars I worked with, almost everyone, I want to say 99% of them were great. If we ever had a star that gave us a problem, we just never invited them back to another show. So everybody liked coming to our shows. And on Sunday, many of them will leave on a Monday. Sunday, we all go out to a restaurant nearby and have a great time between us, the staff, and the stars. And that's the way it was. It was friendly. I believe that everybody that came to our shows should get an autograph. So that's why I always work with all the stars to make sure that everybody had to sign, had to get an autograph. Now, we pushed the autograph people. I mean, we try to, if somebody stopped on the table to try and talk, we push them out of the way because we want to make sure everybody got an autograph. And that was my thing.
Yeah, I see that. So, but yeah, I remember your cons were a lot of fun, and I thought your cons were just like the fan run cons. I mean, I didn't realize that it was really a corporate con, but because I considered it more fan friendly, like a fan run con.
Well, it was. We try to make it fun, but I mean, let's face it. If you're going to be in the business of doing conventions, you want to make some money.
Right.
Uh, but
Yeah, and you did. You could make money and still be friendly, which was great.
right, and that's the way I looked at it. And my my staff was instructed that if anybody came to complain, the customer was always right. Um, when this friend of mine created a Wikipedia page for Vulkon, um, he wrote. He had gone to a lot of my shows in Atlanta and Orlando, so he knew some. Of course, when he put all the conventions, he only put the ones that he was in, but he showed me how to do it, so I updated it. But one of the things he had put on there, which if I would have been thinking, I would have done it. But he put down that when Joe Motes retired, he was the only convention promoter that never screwed a star, never screwed a hotel, and never screwed a fan.
Wow. Yeah,
And
that is great. So you're the
yeah,
only one, like in the U.S. or
well, no, no. There have been many other promoters, but there
I
were a
mean
lot of
that
promoters.
never did all of that. That
Right,
never screwed a star.
right. There were promoters that went belly up. The stars didn't get paid. Hotels didn't get paid. Fans that had put the money in advance lost it. So yeah, there were. Not everybody could be a promoter. I lucked out. It was being at the right place at the right time. I mean, and the reason I got into the picture was I had just gotten out of the Marine Corps, and I was working for an air. I was working for Eastern Airlines, but I was taking college courses for the computer field, and there was a friend of mine that I got with him. He was taking classes with me in the computer field at the college here in Miami, and he came up to me and says, "Hey man, there's a Star Trek convention in West Palm Beach. I don't have a car. Can you drive me and I'll pay for your gas?" And I said, "What's Star Trek?" And he said, "Oh, it's a space show." I said, okay, I'll go ahead and take you up there. And I went ahead and when we were going around checking into the hotel, I bumped into George. Actually, physically bumped into him, and we started. I picked him up and all that, and we started talking. And my friend panicked and said, "Oh my God, that's the guest." And I looked at George and I said, "Oh, I know who you are. I just saw you a couple of weeks ago on TV with John Wayne, the Green Berets." And his funny laugh, and he said, "You never seen Star Trek?" And I said, "No, sir. When Star Trek started and ended, I was in Vietnam and in the Marine Corps." So he said, "I'll tell you what. I just finished running. I'm going to take a shower. Why don't you come and meet me at the cafeteria, and we'll eat and talk some more?" So we started talking, and he told me that at the time he was a commissioner for the city of Los Angeles, and he was actually working on getting the rapid transit system, the one they now have in LA. Um, so we became friends, and he told me, actually, in that convention, the promoter came up and asked George, "I got to put somebody assigned to you for the weekend." And George said, "Joe here is going to take care of me. He's a Marine," just like that. And the guy looked at me and says, "Have you done Star Trek?" I said, "Look, I never seen Star Trek in my life," which was true. And that's how I got started. George and I became friends. He started telling me where he was appearing. I was working for the airline, so I flew for free. So I would fly to all these shows around the country. And he introduced me to the rest of the cast. And then after about doing this for about a year and a half, he said, why don't you get involved in doing conventions?" And I'm one of these that, you really have to push me hard to do anything, um, especially taking gambles. So I went ahead and said, "Well, George, if I do a convention, you're going to be the first one I hire." So about a year later, I had already started working on it, promoting it, and I did my first convention in Miami. And at that time, Star Trek was running. I think it was about 5:30 in the afternoon, Monday through Friday. So I was buying commercials every day on TV, and there really hadn't been any conventions in South Florida. So
And
when,
was this before TNG was on?
oh yeah, uh,
Okay.
the TNG I think wasn't even in the thinking process yet. Because back then the only people doing shows were just Next Generation. I mean, sorry, originals. So
Yes. Okay.
I so I brought him in, and the hotel was set for 1,000 people that I can seat. And when the got ready to open the hotel, the line stretched all the way to the parking lot, and I had 2,000 people, and there was no way to seat them in. So George and I, he said, "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to just change the schedule. I'll speak to the first 1,000, then you're going to move them all out. I'll speak to the second 1,000, and I'm a fast signer, and I'll sign for all of them." So that was the start. That's how I got started.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. And so, yeah, it's the good kind of problem to have, like twice as many people as you expected. And
Yep,
George, I mean, I've seen him at lots of cons, so I know he's real nice. And so he would just, it's amazing. He helped you and said, "We'll do this, and we'll get through all the autographs." That is so cool that he did that. But I know it's in character with him.
it is. And then, of course, he was the one that started introducing me to everybody else. Jimmy, Walter, Michelle. And that's how I got started, little by little. So I started doing them in Miami, and then I started expanding. Once I had Florida, Tampa, Orlando, South Florida, then I started moving out. By then I had met Ruthanne, and it was very hard because I had a 40-hour-a-week job. You got to remember this. I'm working for the airlines. So I'm doing this, and then I'm doing the conventions. So that's when Ruthanne came into the picture. We started expanding and started leaving Florida. Right. I was doing a convention with George and Jimmy in Orlando in 1984, I think it was, 85. And we were sitting in a bar, and a Saturday night, on TV, uh, what do you call it, Love Boat came on. And Jimmy said, "Hey, look, Joe, Love Boat." I said, "Yeah, I know, I watch it all the time." He said, "No, no, no, Joe, Star Trek Love Boat." And that's the way that started. And it was Jimmy and George sitting at the table giving me the idea. So,
Okay.
Hey, Joe, any fond memories about working with the dealers? Because you remember in the 80s, that was a big deal going to Star Trek conventions just to be able to buy Star Trek memorabilia because Star Trek wasn't mainstream enough where you'd go into stores and find T-shirts
right.
and trinkets and things like that. So what was it like organizing the dealers room?
Well, no, that was no problem because since we were drawing the crowds, the dealers wanted to come and do the shows. What started happening then after that was it was when Next Generation started. Creation, the dealers would make their own photos. They would go out and crank the copies, and that's what they would sell at the shows. But the biggest change came when Creation did the licensing agreement with Paramount, and then they told the dealers that, and they will send people out to people's conventions to check the dealers out to see what they're selling, and put cease and desist on them. So they were forcing the dealers that if they want to sell pictures, they have to buy the photos from them because they were paying the licensing fee to Paramount. So it got to the point where I went ahead and started saying, well, hell, if that's the way it's going to be, I'll just go ahead and sign the contract with Creation and sell the photos myself at the registration table, because a lot of the dealers just did not want to pay. I think it was $250 a photo from Creation, and then you will sell it for, I think it's $6 or $7. So many of the dealers just didn't want to do that. That was the only change that happened with dealers. That's for coming to my shows. When you're doing good and when you're bringing the fans in, they all want to come because that's the only way they're going to make money. So I never had any problems with dealers.
Okay. So, what advice would you give to anyone who wants to start a convention?
I've had a couple of people actually ask me about that, and I said things have changed because I've been told now, and I've seen it at SuperCon, where I think the stars now come. You don't pay them a fee. They make their money on selling the autographs, but they have a deal with the promoters where, say, when I retired, Nimoy and Shatner were getting the same amount of money. I'm not going to mention it here on how much it was, but it was up there. I'm going to assume that Nimoy, of course, Shatner's still doing shows. Matter of fact, he's this weekend. I think he's in Tampa. I think what it is he goes to promoters and basically say, my guarantee is $40,000 or whatever, and he sell and I've seen him. The last time he was at SuperCon, I think he was selling his autographs for $75 each. So if his guarantee say it's $40,000, if they don't meet that, then the promoter has to make up the difference. And what I used to do with the stars, which is probably it's like a crossover from before. I got towards the point I was telling the stars. Part of the contract was you will do a Q&A, you will sign autographs for everybody, one autograph for everybody, and you will sign 200 photos for me, which I will sell not against you, but at other conventions. And I will furnish the photos. So they will sign it, and they will actually sign it. The higher the stars, the less photos I will give them, naturally. But like if you go to my eBay, I have an eBay, and I have over 400 items, and they're all autographs. So to give you an idea, when I retired, got out of the business in 2007, these contracts were on the stars. I had over 20,000 autographs. So I'm still selling on eBay every day.
Okay. Wow.
Now,
That's
and
that's something.
I think that's what a lot of the promoters started doing, because I noticed that when I was at SuperCon and I went over to pick up Robin Curtis to take her out at the end of the show, she was in there and I was in there with them, and she was negotiating how much she took in, how much the dealer owed her, and she was signing the autograph. Say if the dealer order, okay, you owe me 5,000. I didn't meet my guarantee. So she would then sign so many photos to make up for that, for the money. And I think that's what's going on with it now. And from what and just a good example. And the last show when Robin was there, George was there, and George was also signing autographs for $75 a head. I was like, I can't believe it, and people were paying it.
Oh, yeah, that's huge. So he probably made his
Yes.
his
So yes,
amount. Yeah.
a lot has changed since and it looks like everything changed right after I retired. And I retired in 2007, and by 2009, I was already hearing that they weren't going to conventions for a fee. They were going there the convention to do what do you call it, guarantees. That's what they're called.
Yeah, the guarantee to make a certain amount from autographs.
Right.
But you used to pay them a lump fee.
Oh yeah, no, I would pay them a flat fee. That the flat fee included they would sign. They would do a Q&A for an hour each day, Saturday and Sunday, and then they would sign autographs each day for everybody that had a paid ticket.
Yeah, see, when I started going to conventions in the 80s, that's how it was. Everybody
Right.
got one autograph for free, maybe two. Sometimes it slid in two or something. But the price of the autograph was included with your admission to the convention.
Yes.
So in closing, Joe, when you go to SuperCon in Florida, how would you say the convention scene has changed from when you were putting on your Vulkon conventions starting in
Well,
the early 80s?
it's a madhouse because they do Q&A, but they're not. When I was doing my shows were strictly sci-fi. They actually became strictly sci-fi and then science because when I started bringing the astronauts in. But from what I've seen at SuperCon, people go there. You have everything. You have I can't even think of where people dress up, cosplay. You have cosplays. You have all kinds of stuff, and there's no really panels going on. Yeah, every once in a while they'll go, okay, well George is going to come on stage and talk for a while and stuff like that. So it's totally different. We had a schedule. Everybody that was a guest went on stage and did their Q&As. Now it's totally different. It's mixture. All the shows are mixtured. It's a mixture of sci-fi, fantasy, horror, cosplay, you name it.
Oh, they have sitcoms, wrestlers, like anything you could think of.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
It's more of a pop culture con now because all these other actors and other celebrities, just, they figured out they can sign autographs for money too. So they're coming to these things.
Right. I tell friends that I came in at the right time and I left at the right time. I came in the late 70s when things were starting to pick up, and I was through the 80s and 90s, which were the highlight. That's when the top of the conventions were being done all around the country. And then when I retired in 2007, things just started going downhill. Even the people that bought my company, it just changed. I mean, they tried to do it close to mine, but then they started bringing all these other people that weren't Star Trek in and all that. So it was changing. That's when I said, well, I'm glad I'm out of the picture.
Yeah, we missed the era of regional Star Trek conventions. That's just something that's it's gone in history. I don't think we're ever going to have that again.
No, I have people ask me, says, I like to get into the business of doing it, and I tell them, look, get into the business of doing something else. You don't want to do Star Trek because let me tell you something. It's not that easy to get started. Now, Leslie, those people that do conventions now, they have an advantage I did not have. I did not have Facebook. I did not have Instagram. I did not have any of the stuff, social medias that are out there. So I only had commercials on TV and hopefully newspaper articles, and that was
and Starlog magazine.
And Starlog magazine, which I always advertised on it. So
Starlog was our internet. So, I mean, That and you had to have a mailing list too, because I remember getting in the mail a list of all the Star Trek conventions that were regional, and
Right.
so your mailing list had to be gold for you.
It was, and on top of that, yeah, okay, just to give you an idea, when I did the George Takei convention, my very first one, I didn't even have a mailing list. It was all commercials on TV, every day, constant. And because it was the first time something like that, the Miami Herald wrote a nice article about it. So that was good. But luckily, a friend of mine that was with me said, "You know what you need to do? You got a lot of people here. Go out and buy index cards and have everybody sign their name and address on it."
Yes.
When I did my second convention, which was about 6 months later, and I did it in Fort Lauderdale. I had a staff of all my friends from my staff that lived near me. We would come together about a month or so before into my house. My wife would cook things for them and other stuff. We would sit down and we would go hand by hand, write their names on the flyer and mail it out. Because back then, personal home computers were just starting to come out. And so I had no mailing list to be able to create labels. It wasn't after I bought a home computer and I was able to figure out how to do a mailing list that I was able to start putting these things into the mailing list. So I would say the first 6, 7 conventions I did were all handwritten. And that was
yeah, and I was on your mailing list too. So yeah, and it was great because that was, that and Starlog was how I knew when you were having another con.
Right. Yeah. And Starlog was very good. Dave McDonald and I became very good friends. Matter of fact, we're still friends on Facebook, and we still talk back and forth. So yeah, like I said, I came in at the right time, and I retired at the right time. And luckily, computers came in right around the time that I was already doing them.
Well, thanks, Joe. It was great talking to you.
Joe, you're a storehouse of information. We're so glad for all you've contributed to the Star Trek community over the years.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the Force be with you. Nanu Nanu.